So welcome to our fourth installment of the Mary HYTKEN DUMONT University here at Untitled Bethlehem congregation. We do want to learn tonight also in memory of Mary DUMONT and also memory of Sid Bear, Sam Amol, Abe Mogi, and he's a Baruch. Memories be a blessing. Our task for tonight is to finish up the book of Ruth. I feel bad that it's going. I wish there would be another chapter. You know, it's so good. But we must go on. And the fourth chapter, in some ways, I see some commentators don't spend quite as much time on the fourth chapter as they do on others, because it may be a little less crafty than some of the other chapters, but nonetheless, very worthy of our study and very, very fascinating. So let's once again, I've prepared this sheet which has the Hebrew and the translation of every verse in chapter 4, and then various questions. This time I included some other midrashim and other commentaries as well. Most of our studies have been based really on modern writers and their literary analysis, which these are very learned writers. They're also basing it on various midrashim, etc. But they're also heavily influenced by their own literary approaches. This time I will continue with that. However, we'll throw in some of the midrashim and some of the medieval commentaries as well. Okay, so here we go. Uvoaz al-Ashar. The chapter begins that Boaz went up to the gate. I don't picture a gate like like you make a circle around the door and you walk out the gate. If you've ever been to the Shar Shechem, the Damascus Gate, there's a tremendous complex there. If you've been in the excavations at Dan up in the north, it's a wonderful gate. There's a chair for the king of the city-state. He would sit at the chair and he would watch people. So he went up to the gate and he sat there. Now, the reason you go to the gate, you always say the gates, when you want to say something public, you say they went to the gates. What's the gate? So you have to understand something. People live in a city for security. So they all cluster together in close proximity. They live in the walled city, and they pay for that. There's a tax to the king, etc. But there's no room in the city for fields, so you go outside for the fields. So every day you basically go outside. So therefore, if Boaz said, "Look, I could marry you, but there's another fellow who's a redeemer who's closer, so let me go see if he wants to redeem you." So he goes to the gate, and he figures if he sits at the gate, someone will pass by. V'hinei goel over, and behold, the goel, the other redeemer who's a closer relative than he's an older brother, he's a closer cousin, something like that. He's passing. Asher diber Boaz, the guy that Boaz was talking about. Vayomer surap shivaplo ploni alomei. Come on over here, Sur, turn over here. Ploni almoni, which is a funny expression. It sounds funny in Hebrew. It's onomatopoeia. Ploni almoni. It has a alliteration. So the idea that suddenly, and behold, the fellow that they talked about, they said was a closer relative, there he is. On the one hand, it's not so surprising. As I explained, if you go to the gate, you're going to find anybody who's not a lazy bum, doesn't stay home for the day. He's not struck by the coronavirus. He's going to leave the city. He's going to go do some farming. So it's not a surprise. On the other hand, the word v'hinei, and behold, it's almost like he went to the gate, he sat down, and behold, bang, there's the fellow that Boaz mentioned, showing us what?
Title to Ruth's hand if he wanted it.
Well, that's true, but why did he show up all of a sudden? How is it that you just happened to be there?
He's one of the elders of the city, maybe?
He's what?
Was he one of the elders of the city?
No, he had to, no, because if he was, he would have been expected to be there. Boaz had to give him a special invitation to sit down with the elders at the gate.
Okay.
You're right, the elders probably sat at the gate. It's an expression. So it could be a miraculous hand of God. This could show you a hand of God. Don't forget, what did we have earlier? We had Vayikra Mikra. It just happened to be that Ruth went shopping for food at Boaz's farm. It just happened to be, and he just happened to be a nice guy, and he happened to be a close relative, happened to be very wealthy, and he happened to be related and all that. So there's all these things in this book that just happen to be. Nay, and behold. Let's take a look at some of the questions. How does this chapter start? What's the first word? Boaz. Now, if you recall, how did the first chapter start? Who was in charge of the first chapter?
Naomi?
Yeah, Naomi.
No, not close. Not Naomi. Elimelech. She didn't decide. A woman doesn't decide to go to a new city, usually.
Elimelech.
Talmud says sometimes she can demand to go to Israel. But generally, it's the husband decide. He decides.
Elimelech.
He's leaving Israel.
He died.
So the first chapter is about a man who's sort of like a villain and like a no-goodnik that he left Israel. He left. He abandoned everybody. The rabbis posit that he was as wealthy as Boaz. And he said, I'm getting out of here. I don't want to be responsible for this place. Second chapter, they get to Israel. Who initiates hunting for food?
Ruth.
Second chapter begins. Ruth says to the depressed Naomi, who's Mrs. Bitterness, she says to her, let me go see if I can find somebody who likes me and give me some food. Third chapter, now that she's got all this food, now Naomi's getting into it. Who initiates the shidduch?
Naomi does.
Naomi. And the fourth chapter begins with Boaz. So look at the beautiful chiastic structure. We have bookends. We have a man at the beginning, a man at the end. The bad guy man at the beginning, or sort of a man on the street kind of guy. Maybe there are no bad guys in this book, but at least he's kind of he's just average man who is hungry. He left the country. That's Elimelech. And here's a man who's a leader, and he is going to take action regarding the future of Ruth. That's the first chapter and the fourth chapter. In the middle chapters, one chapter, Ruth is the hero, and one chapter, Naomi is the hero. Although, as we said, Ruth modifies Naomi's plan. So it's interesting if we started with one of the questions for one of our weeks was, who's the hero? Is the hero Naomi or Ruth?
Right.
Well, it turns out everyone gets their own chapter. So Elimelech and Naomi. Elimelech is the first chapter. Second chapter is the Ruth chapter. Third chapter is the Naomi chapter. And Boaz is the final chapter. Now, the idea that it's broken into chapters, that's a Goyish idea. We didn't make up the chapters. But it's true that there are four literary units in which are parallel to each other. Don't forget we said last week that the second and third chapters, they begin with the women talking to each other. They continue with the whole interaction of Ruth and Boaz. And they end off with the women conferring at the end of the story as well. So tremendous, what's not synergy, tremendous, no, what am I saying? It is very parallels and what am I saying? Not syncretic.
It's a good story.
It's tremendous symmetry. Thank you very much. There's
Imagery.
Tremendous symmetry between the different chapters. Okay, so it's
I want to
beautifully
learn
crafted.
Hebrew. Now I want to learn English.
Let's
from you.
continue.
Rabbi, I noticed something else you had said previously.
Yes.
You had talked about that Boaz wasn't maybe quite the hero that we sometimes think he was based on the quality of everybody. And you said that this was a small town, so everybody who's got a pulse basically knows Ruth and Naomi are back. And if that's the case, this Polani person would know, he knows where he is in the family tree. He knows he would be a closer redeemer than, say, somebody else. Why has he not come forth until now?
Right. So this is the whole book is really about the transition from the judges period where the men were kind of falling apart. Leadership was scant. And half the time the women have to take over. And it transitions to a place where Boaz takes over and eventually David takes over. And so we're transitioning, and Plony is part of the problem. He's your typical man from the judges period where the men were not men, where the men didn't do their job. Matter of fact, somewhat similar to some of the problems in the male community, in communities that suffer from slavery. The Jews were often slaves during the period of the judges. They were enslaved by local people, including the Moabites and others. And so the men were kind of emasculated, and that's part of the problem. Moving along. Now, next question. For what and for whom is this a tikkun? If Boaz now becomes a bit of a hero, right, when we were a little worried about him before, he wasn't doing anything, he didn't take the women in, he didn't propose, he didn't redeem the land. He's not, he didn't give them a roof over their head. So he's making a tikkun for himself, but who else is he making a tikkun for?
Ruth and Naomi.
No. Whose action
is a
repairing? He's someone else failed, and he's
repairing what this guy Plony did, yeah, or
who else?
Elimelech.
Elimelech.
So we start off with a failed man, and we end off with a repentant man, a man who's been whipped into shape by these activist women.
That's what I hear.
Now, don't forget, Naomi knew. How did Naomi know? She said, "The man will not rest until his job is completed today." She knew that Boaz was that kind of guy. If he said he'd take care of it, he would take care of it, and he did. So,
He's an honorable man. Then
he's a good man. He's an honorable man. Very, very honorable.
Good. His word was good.
Now it says the Redeemer. This image of the Redeemer, which we had already in the last chapter, is a language that in the end of the book of Leviticus we have regarding redeeming land on behalf of a poor relative, but also the idea of Redeemer has a broader implication. What does it allude to?
Hashem.
Right. Hashem is the Redeemer, or the David who's going to be Redeemer, or the Mashiach to be Redeemer. So there's a lot of allusions there as well. Now, why is it significant that this man has no name? What does it mean that he has no name?
He's not an important person. He's not honorable.
Well, he's very important. He could at this point he could steal the whole story.
We're
trying to have a love story between Boaz and Ruth. Oh, we said it's not much of a love story. It's more of a.
We don't want to talk Lashon Hora about
business arrangement. 1 second. Good. But this guy could take over the whole thing. So good. Maybe because he didn't do the right thing, we don't want to talk Lashon Hora. Good. This book doesn't have bad guys. If it has one, we don't give him a name. We don't want to mention his name. But there's something else. What is the relationship of this book to names?
Some of the characters are named for what they like the Naomi's boys were named basically after what happened to them. So it kind of alludes to their character.
Right. And what about Naomi? What does her name mean?
Sweetness. I'd have to look it up again.
She said that people should call her bitterness. Mara. So names are very important here. Obviously, if you go back to Deuteronomy, what's the purpose of a Levirate marriage?
To keep the name of the deceased.
The name, right.
Also to keep
the
women in
So
clothes.
here's a clever idea. I think Uriel Simon said this. At this point in the story, if you were reading for the first time, you would wonder, oh, I wonder if this guy's going to take her. I was kind of hoping that, these two guys would get together. Boaz and Ruth, they seem so well suited. They're both Anshe Chayil, people of action. And yet this guy Plony can mess it all up. And you're kind of wondering, who's going to win the day? What's going to happen? So,
Hi, Debbie.
So here comes a fellow, and we say he has no name. So right away, the author is telling us, don't worry. He has no name. We're not giving him a name because he refused to
do what he was supposed to do.
Which would be what? To
Levirate marriage.
You do the Levirate marriage and you do the redemption, then what are you restoring?
The brother's name.
His brother's name. So this guy has no name because the author decided to take out his name because he's not going to fulfill his job of filling in the name of reestablishing the name of the deceased husband of Ruth, and therefore we are already told in this verse that you know what's going to happen?
Going to die.
Is he going to steal Ruth from Boaz?
No.
No. So we are hinting to right now. Don't worry. Don't some books like to maintain suspense. This book's giving us a subtle hint that don't worry, he ain't gonna do it. He's a loser. He's not gonna redeem this week. Okay.
Loser. Is there an Ivrit word for loser?
What is the significance of the passing by of Plony? What's his?
He just didn't want to be bothered.
1 second.
Yeah, he had to find
1
him.
second. I'm not sharing. 1 second. I'm not sharing the screen properly. Forget. Why don't you point that out? Let's see. 1 second. I'm not sharing the screen. There we are. Welcome to Debbie as well. There we go. So, what's the significance of the fact that Boaz wanted to find this other fellow who's a closer relative, and behold, there he was. The relative passed by first thing in the morning. So the Midrash Rabbah, the Ruth Rabbah says, this passage I just have in Hebrew and English. I like that. And it says that, now the Redeemer whom Boaz mentioned passed by. So the Midrash says, so was he waiting behind there and then he appeared? I mean, how did this guy just happen to show up? So Rabbi Shmuel, son of Nachman, said, even if he was at the end of the earth, the Holy One, blessed be, would have flown him and brought him here, so that the righteous man would not be upset sitting there. Here's a righteous Boaz waiting to do his great mitzvah of marrying Ruth and redeem the land, and he's a very honorable man. He wants to make sure the closer relatives gets the first dibs. So God would go through any lengths to make sure that this deal happened. And so that's a very beautiful midrash. Okay, so it's another act of providence. This book, in many ways, is about human action. It's what Malcolm mentioned the other week. It's about human action that Ruth and Naomi took action, and it's also about the divine hand and how the two work together. These are very active women, and now Boaz is taking action too.
Some women have to be a little more forward because men are shy.
Right. But without God's help, it wasn't happening. Moving along in the verse. So Boaz is a man of action. Right away, he gets a minion. That's something we don't like to talk about these days. He gets a minion right away, and he says, guys, sit down. They sat down. Do we need a minion for what they're doing? I don't know. Land acquisition, sometimes the Talmud says you need a minion. Some sort of court has been convened. Now, how does this contrast with the last chapter? Anyone think about that? Last chapter, Ruth said that Naomi said Ruth should go down to the field, and she went down to the field, etc., etc. In this chapter, Boaz says, I want 10 men for this activity. What's the difference between this chapter and last chapter?
He needed witnesses or something like that.
Okay, good. What was the nature of the last chapter?
Ruth was trying to move around without witnesses.
Right. Last chapter was completely private. That was Naomi's harebrained scheme that that Ruth would seduce Boaz, and in the end, we claim that she didn't really seduce him at all. She just said, "Hey, take care of business," and he said, "Well, I got a business partner. I got to talk to Ploni Almoni first. Then we'll see what's going to happen." So, but it was all private. Naomi's idea was go there, balat, stealthily, sneak in, and nobody should see. And then Boaz like, "Oh my goodness, this is going to ruin my reputation. Don't move, don't go anywhere, don't let anyone see you." And now the opposite. In the Boaz chapter, this is going to be public. Everyone's going to know about it, right? But it's not a secret that he's marrying this Moabite woman. Everyone's going to know about it. It's a public act. The rabbis say that he and the rabbis at the time instituted the idea that you could marry a Moabite woman, just not a man.
Did she didn't have to convert. She was just automatically.
That's the question.
Such a good
woman.
woman.
In the first chapter, we said that she had obviously had some Jewish roots because Naomi told her to return to her gods, implying that she had left her gods. On the other hand, her sister-in-law was able to revert to her previous religion, which shows that the conversion was not complete. Naomi completed the conversion by moving to Israel and embracing Ruth and her God.
Okay.
Moving along. So the Boaz lays out the facts. He tells this fellow who's supposed to be the redeemer, supposedly, that redeemer of the land, that there's a plot of land that our brother Elimelech. This may imply that Elimelech was actually some sort of brother to these people, but doesn't seem likely that the relationship of Naomi and Elimelech, his brother-in-law, doesn't seem likely. Probably by brother he means cousin. But anyway, Naomi sold it. She sold this land, and now we have to buy it back. But I don't know. Later on, it seems like they're buying it from Naomi, so I don't really understand.
Did Naomi own the land, so she sold it to Boaz? Is that what happened? I'm kind of slow sometimes.
I think she wants to. Yeah, I'm not sure. Either she sold it and they have to redeem it, as it says in Leviticus.
Yeah.
That's what it usually means to be a redeemer.
Okay.
Someone comes in hard times, like Elimelech. He leaves the land, sells his land, takes the money with him, and he lives off his money.
Okay.
They come back, they have no land and they have no money. They used it up in 10 years.
Right.
So he buys it back for her. But later we're going to say that he buys the field from Naomi. So I don't know. I didn't look into that aspect of it. Could be that he's buying it from her. Anyway, let's continue. It says here that she sold it. So what's the focus here? What does it mean that Elimelech is a brother? We said that doesn't really mean brother. What new information do we get here? What new information that we didn't know about? That Naomi sold her field. Not only did Elimelech leave the land, but he also sold his field. So he was sort of, he's landless, he's nameless, he's gone, he has no children. He's sort of, there's a lot of problems with Elimelech's status at this point. So it's interesting. Vani Amarti, so Boaz continues. I said, I want to tell you in front of your ears today, acquire this land across in front of the presence of these people who are sitting here, all these elders who are here. Im tigal, gal. If you want to redeem it. Because Boaz is a man of action. Do it and do it now. Im lo, igal, hagidali. If you're not going to do it, let me know right now. Ve'edan, then I'll know. There's no one aside from you. I'm the next one. I'm after you. I'm the next of kin. So in a very dramatic moment in the book, the man, Ploni Almoni, the man who has no name, he says, I will redeem the land. Right? So if you're a first-time reader, you say, oh my goodness, he's going to buy the land, and the whole plan of Ruth marrying Boaz is ruined. Now, so if we were reading for the first time, we'd be very concerned. But we said that there was a hint before that this guy has no name, that they already decided he has no name. So there's a hint that he's not going to do it. So he says, okay, I'm taking the field. Story over, game over. This guy who has no name is going to take the field. And then Boaz is not the redeemer. So Vayomer Boaz. So Boaz said, oh, wait 1 second. Just like Columbo, would always say he has one more point he wants to bring out. When you acquire the field from Naomi, now here's where I'm confused. Buying it from Naomi? I thought she sold it. Well, anyway, maybe for Naomi. Anyway, and from Ruth the Moabite. So apparently, he's asserting, do you know whose land it is? First I said it was Naomi's, but now I'm telling you it's also Ruth's. Because her husband also had land.
Oh.
And she's an inheritor. And she's not a Gentile who gets nothing. She's Jewish. And I bought this to Lakim Shem Hamed Al Nachlato. There are two things that go on here. We want to establish the name of the man and his land. Right? Because in those days, everybody knew this is the McCoy's land and this is the Hathaway's land. Right? This is the Goldberg's land, this is the Greenberg's land. And but these fellows, Elimelech, his sons Machlon and Kilion, they lost their connection with the land. So this book, in many ways, is about a Jew's connection with the land, to reestablish that connection. And when I get the property, I'm not just there to get it back for the family, because I'm a relative. I want to get it. I want to get the name of that deceased person connected with his land again. Now how do you do that?
A star or something. I don't know.
You also get it from there. Yeah. So most people interpret this verse to mean that Ruth comes with a deal, that you can't get the land without Ruth. You also get it for Ruth to establish the name on the land. One of the commentators,
pretty good deal.
The Eshkol HaGofer, the Tzroa Amor commentary, I often quote, he's from Spain, from Portugal. He has a new commentary that just came out, even though he lived 500 years ago, on Ruth. And he says that Boaz was trying to be subtle. He says, do you want to redeem the land? So he says, yeah, sure, I'll redeem the land. But this fellow was not very learned. The Talmud says he was a bit of an Amaretz. He was a bit of a knave. So he didn't get the hint that Ruth comes with it. So then Boaz has to spell it out. No, when you get it, you have to establish the name on the land by marrying Ruth.
What a loser.
Is, who made up this rule that when you buy the land, you have to buy the wife too? You have to acquire the wife, you have to marry the wife. Who made this up?
Either Hashem or somebody in the Talmud.
So the question is, not in the
Rabbi.
Talmud, not in the Torah. Yes.
Okay. I don't know. I don't know.
Right.
No,
The
no
question,
answer.
who could it be? Who could have made up this rule?
Boaz.
Boaz, right.
And Rabbi, if
Yes.
that's the case, this joke, why is Boaz is supposed to be strong? His name is strength. He doesn't appear to be strong.
He's 80 years old.
That we dealt with in other classes.
Wait a minute. Nothing wrong with being 80 years old.
No, there's not. I'm 72 and I'm looking forward to it.
But think about it a minute.
Now, 1 second.
What is he doing? I mean, is he setting Poloni up?
Right. So let me just say a few things about Boaz. We talked in the other chapters, is Boaz a strong man or not?
Yes.
My wife and I had a big conflict whether we should call my son Boaz. I thought Boaz is rather weak in this book. He doesn't step up until this chapter.
He's shy.
My wife felt like you did. Boaz is main strength, very strong. Right. So Charlie said maybe shy. Boaz, the fact is, unless the women stepped up, we don't know if Boaz would have taken any action at all. However, in this chapter, he's very strong. I admit that. In this chapter, he's taking action, and he's very cunning over here. He's not weak. He's cunning. He says, sure, you're a closer relative. You can have it. But, you got to take the land. You got to establish the name on the land. And you know what that means? You got to marry Ruth. Right. And there, he knocks him out. He knows this guy. This guy's weak. He can easily knock him out. No way he's going to marry this woman.
He could have had a great wife and all that land. Wow.
I think.
You figure,
Still,
There are a few people trying to comment. Yes.
Rabbi, this Joe, I think he's setting him up. Amol and Killing, they married Moabite women. He should marry, and look what happened to them. He's going to marry a Moabite woman. Look what's going to happen to him.
Right. Many people say that this fellow is not too learned. He doesn't know this new rule that you're allowed to marry Moabite. He would say a simple thing. He would say, "What?" But it's ambiguous, so he doesn't say she's Moabite. He said, "I can't do it," as we'll see in a moment. But that's right.
The last two guys that married a Moabite woman, they died. Yeah.
Sorry?
But
The last
Rabbi,
two guys, I'm sorry.
sorry, Rabbi,
Yes.
isn't he sort of carrying out the laws established that the judges would have done? It's almost following the Abraham approach that you always negotiate with everybody around you and you take into account all the laws that apply. And once there's an ownership scenario where Ruth owns the land, then you have to negotiate from Ruth's point of view.
Oh, you're
And
looking at like a lawyer. Let's
that's
see.
what Boaz was trying to do.
I like your answer, sir.
Boaz was trying to carry out the rules and laws like a judge, which previously was missing.
Very good. You're saying he's the well, the period of judges is the question whether it really means judging, but there's an element of judging, like Devorah was a good judge. and she did judge. So although some people are judges, they do it more from a administrative point of view, not so much from a judicial point of view. But you want to argue that Boaz here is becoming a true shofet, a true judge.
Yes.
And matter of fact, some say Boaz is Ivtzan. He is one of the judges, minor judge named Ivtzan. And he's judging that if the idea is to establish a relationship between the land and the name, then you have to then on her behalf. If the whole point is to do it on her behalf, we should do it on her behalf all the way. I like it.
That's
But
right.
but Joe is saying that Dr. Joe was saying that he's using some cunning here because he knows this fellow can do it. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, he's already got a wife. He needs another wife. It's setting him up.
Right. That's why we, the readers, according to Uriel Simon, and certainly Boaz, and even Ruth and Naomi, they're not too worried about this other fellow, right?
Right.
Now, it could be the assumption is all the men are sort of like, no offense, but sort of they're all in the 4F category. You know what I'm saying? They're all.
And then
That's the generation.
Foot spurs.
The interesting about this Polonial, he says, I'm not going to marry, but you marry her.
Right.
It's all right back at it. This is a
Let's
wild.
see. Let's take a look at the next verse. 1 second. Let's just go in order. 1 second. If it's also, so whose idea is this? If it is also Ruth, what is it saying about Ruth? 1 second.
She listens to her mother-in-law, respects her parents, or something like that.
It's a triple redemption. Someone pointed out. Yael Ziegler pointed out. Triple redemption. You redeem the wife, the dead, and the land altogether. In other words, there's a widow. You have to redeem her. There's the dead. You have to take care of their name, and you have to take care of the land of the dead. It all goes together. And the Tzra Mor, the Eshkol HaKofer claims the Boaz thought the man could take a hint, but he wasn't that learned. Yeah.
Just one comment. Svor amor. In Spanish, amor is love.
Oh, no, it's interesting. No, it's mur. Okay, moving along. But it's interesting. That's interesting because he was Spanish. Moving along. Now, I cannot redeem for myself. So it's interesting. He says for himself. Is he selfish? I'll ruin my land. Many people say he's talking about his family, that he'll ruin his family. You could argue that he didn't want to have properties in different places, so that's why it wasn't good for his business. Atha, et gulati, you can redeem my property. Lo chaligol, and Joe is suggesting that he's telling him, you marry the woman. I'm not going to marry.
I mean, if his wife, he brings home a Moabite woman, what's his wife going to say?
Right. Now, don't forget, the Moabite question is not only a legal question, like it's against the Torah, but people may have really despised Moabites in general.
Yeah,
because
this is the enemy.
Depending when this story took place, which is a matter of question, it may have taken place during a period when the Moabites ruled. And that's how Elimelech was able to so easily just shift to a different country. He wasn't moving to a new country. He didn't need a passport. He was going to the conquering country of Moab, and he came, and eventually she comes back. So she was viewed not only as a stranger, perhaps a Gentile, but also as an enemy. So this may be lurking behind this fellow's reaction, which is similar to the city. The whole city treated her like dirt when she came to town. They didn't pay attention to her. They didn't welcome her. They only welcomed Naomi, and Naomi they didn't welcome too well either. All they could say was, "You look terrible." Moving along, then the book waxes poetic and legalistic. This was the way it was formerly done in Israel. Al Gilah Batzmura, for any redemption of the land or exchange. So the word exchange is not. It is a legal term, but it's usually used for exchanging animals, which is forbidden. It's funny that they use the word here, but l'kayem kol davar, in order to establish anything, you know what you do? Shalaf ish na'lo v'natan re'ev. You take off your shoe and you give it to your friend. Zodat zudabi Yisrael. So that's the official rule and practice.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Rabbi, takes off the shoe. It doesn't say.
Right. The Talmud debates whose shoe do you use? Do you use he took off his shoe? Yeah, it's still not clear. And there's a whole debate about it. Is it the person who's acquiring, the person who's giving, the person who's getting?
Yeah.
So the Goel says to Boaz, take off your shoe. Acquire. And he took off his shoe. It's not clear. Now,
Right.
so my teacher, Rabbi Shalom Karmi, great Bible teacher at YU, he said, what does this shoe smell like?
It smells like a levirate marriage to me.
Correct. Excellent. The shoe smells like a levirate marriage. Charles said like a true student of mine. The shoe looks like it smells. In other words, what we're really in Leviticus doing redemption of land, Parshat Bahar, that if someone comes in hard times, you buy their land, you redeem it. That's what we're doing. That's our topic. And yet, there's a shoe. Shoes are used for something else. Shoes are used when you take off the shoe of the brother-in-law and you spit at him for not marrying you. So someone takes off his shoe over here. I recall at the time, I haven't double checked it recently, that Josephus says that this was a levirate marriage and she spat at the brother-in-law, at this Ploni Almoni fellow. And my teacher said, this is not some ancient version of the book of Ruth, which Josephus had. It's Josephus, the ignoramus, assuming there was levirate marriage because it smelled like levirate marriage. The shoe smelled like levirate marriage. Okay. Moving along. A little sense of humor from my teacher. Okay, now. Okay. So also the word tzmura is interesting. It means exchange. So they're going to make an exchange. He takes off his shoe. He lifts up the shoe. You still do this at a wedding. Many occasions when you buy chametz, the rabbi has a handkerchief. You lift up the handkerchief. It's the same thing. It doesn't matter if it's a shoe or a handkerchief or a scarf or a pen or an iPhone or keys or boy pen. It's all the idea. You give something. The Caleb Shokona, whoever is buying something, lifts up. You use his things usually. So it would be Boaz's shoe. He's buying it. You lift up his shoe, and it works that way. But the word tzmura, exchange, is a legal term also in the end of the book of Leviticus. So it's interesting. It alludes to another Jewish law about exchanging animals. Okay. Vayomer Boaz lezkenim. Boaz said to the elders and all the nation, all the people, it means all the people staying there, Eidimatem hayom, you are witnesses today. I bought from Naomi, whom, by the way, Boaz almost never says anything to Naomi except for this sentence. He doesn't talk to her. He's kind of mad at her or whatever. Maybe there's some kind of flirtation going on. Who knows? It's some kind of weird thing between him and her. She knows he's a good man. He's happy to help the daughter-in-law. He never says, I'm trying to help my mother-in-law. I'm trying to help Naomi. He never explicitly gives her anything. Last chapter, we had Ruth claiming that he had given her things to give to the mother-in-law. But we never explicitly see that he's interested in the mother-in-law. But in any event, he says, I'm buying it from Naomi, the land of Elimelech, and the land of Machlon and Kilion. And by the way, I'm also acquiring as a woman, this woman. How does that work? Who knows? But somehow he's claiming that with the land comes the woman as well, because the name is on the land. And I'm acquiring her as a woman. The word to acquire someone as a woman is a biblical expression. The rabbis say, don't be insulted by that. Acquisition is very serious. When I say this is my iPhone, this is my pillow, I'm very serious about that. If you came in my house and you took my pillow, I was very upset. Acquisition, you're more attached. Try to downsize your house, right? You practically, pull your hair out, giving away every book and every pillow and every pillowcase. You might need this one, on a Tuesday, because we're very attached to things we buy. There's a mystical attachment to things that you acquire. So while obviously we don't buy the woman, but the expression purchasing, especially purchase of land, it is a very deep kind of a connection. And to that extent, we borrow that language. Anyway, I'm also acquiring everything of Machlon and Kilion from Naomi. So he's claiming that the deal is Naomi. And Ruth, I'm acquiring too, the wife of Machlon. And for the first time, we find out that Ruth was married to Machlon. Till now, it wasn't clear. And I'm going to establish the name of the dead on his property. So by marrying the woman and by owning the property and being married to this woman, it establishes the name. People will say it's Machlon's Machlon's wife's land. The name of the dead will not be lost from his brethren. That's me. That's Boaz, and from the Shar Mekamo, from the gates of his place in Bethlehem.
Anyone ever done any compare the daughters of Zelophehad with this?
The daughters of you want to compare this to the daughters of Zelophehad? The daughters of Zelophehad were trying to keep the name of their father on the land.
Could they own the land? I think that was settled. And maybe
they did own the land. Yes, they own the land. Yes, but here he's the husband, so he buys it. Yeah, and it's very legalistic. You were acquired to this day, but that's another interesting association with.
So we could own land.
Yeah. Listen to this. The words. Joe points us to the words at the end of Numbers. He says, "Lama yigarash shem avinu minachlato." Why should the name of our father be lessened from his property? Let's get that exact verse. Let me just get a chumash over here. Second.
Let's see here.
Oh, very good. There's so many allusions to other parts of the Torah. It's not even funny. Some people say it's similar to the book of Esther. We already compared to the laws of levirate marriage. We compared to the laws we compared it to Eliezer, who also goes to find a bride, and he's very lucky in finding one. We mentioned the Tamura laws. There are just so many laws here. So Dr. Joe wants to say that it reminds us of the daughters of Zelophehad. That's found in Parshas Pinchas. Lama yigarash shem avinu mitoch mishpato. Why should the name of our father be lessened from his family? Mm-hmm. So give us a piece of land. What does land got to do with the name? The name is established through that because people walk through, they go through the land and they say, oh, that's Farmer Jones' land. That's Marshall Levy's land. That's how people identify land. Good. Next. They all said, testified, it's true. And then they make a blessing. This book is a book of blessings. Who has given a blessing so far to whom in this book?
Ruth gave a blessing to Naomi, I think. In my opinion, your people, my people.
Naomi blessed.
Yeah.
She blessed both of the daughters for
the daughters-in-law.
Yeah. Good. I've sometimes wondered why this book wasn't named the Book of Naomi.
We discussed it. Yeah. We discussed it. It does. L. Ziegler says the book solves Naomi's problem. It's true, but the only person who's the most perfect hero in the book is Ruth. The others can all be criticized, including Naomi. But the book is designed to solve Naomi's problem. Yes. So in that sense, the book of Naomi. So it depends on what you mean by hero. Hero central figure. I was talking to Bluma about this. Hero central figure or hero best figure. Ruth is the best figure. Naomi is the central figure in many ways. But as we showed, everyone gets their own chapter. But moving along, who else gave a blessing? So Naomi, let's go. Naomi gave a blessing to the two girls. Who else?
Her daughter-in-laws?
Daughters-in-law. Before they came with her.
Didn't Boaz give one to Ruth for her?
Boaz gave one to Ruth.
For her willingness.
Twice. First, when he blessed her for all that she'd done, and then, but especially when she proposed, he said, "You were blessed," right? And now the elders say, "May God give this woman who's coming into your home, like Rachel and Leah." Oh. Now, Uriel Simon said, "Whoa, that's a very nice blessing for your daughters, but it's a little bit surprising for this woman. Why?
Who said that to whom? Say again, please.
The elders say to Boaz that this woman should be like Rachel and Leah. Why is that a bit
Oh.
surprising?
It's a
Well,
complete,
there's still the argument of some people accepting the fact that she converted.
Right. Malcolm?
right.
Yes.
No, I was going to say that it was the final conversion, acceptance of her being converted.
Yes, because you see, it's one thing. In other words, we could all say, yeah, sure, you can convert as long as you sit in the back row. But you want to be like Rachel and Leah. That's for the special people, you know. So they're saying no, full fledged. And these two women built the house of Israel. So that's a beautiful expression. Du chayil. Remember, Eshet chayil, Ish chayil, Gibor chayil, the man of valor, the woman of valor.
Yes.
So do great things in Efrat, which is near Bethlehem, or that's the region of Bethlehem, and call out the name in Bethlehem. You'll be famous in Bethlehem. So I have a lot to say about this verse. Let's see. So how have we come full circle? Who's giving the blessing here?
The elders are that when she
Elders.
and they went
Elders of the city. When we first started this book, how did the people in the city relate to Ruth?
They didn't like her because she's a Moabite.
Sure.
Yeah.
So they had no relationship to her at all. And
Stranger.
the chief farmer in Boaz's group, they said, she's a Moabite, right? And so Boaz totally turned the city around and helped them realize she's a kind woman. She deserves to be part. We want her to be part of our Jewish people. In some ways, if you have kindness, you belong. It's definitional to the Jewish people. So where else do we have blessings? We talked about. Why do we need blessings now? Why is this a book in which we have to have blessings? Anybody know? Why is this a period of history where we need all these blessings? You got to bless each other. Why?
It was a bad period in history, I guess.
Yeah. It's
Yes.
sort of a cursed time. So everyone's blessing. Now watch this. Yael Ziegler points out a beautiful thing. Look at this. I'm lining up the Hebrew and the English so you can see it. Do chayil, be brave, be active in Efrat, and perpetuate your name in Bethlehem. What two themes come out in this little poem?
Well, Naomi was very brave for trying to get those Ruth and Boaz together. That was
Yes,
pretty
but
brave.
who's called? It's true, it's a brazen thing. But who's called chayil?
Chayil, Ashes Chayil.
Right.
It's Ruth.
Ruth is the only woman in Tanakh called Ashes Chayil, other than the ode, the actual Ashes Chayil ode in Proverbs. And Boaz is one of the many men who's known as Gibor Chayil. So they say, do Chayil, do the good stuff that you do. And by the way, what's a Chayil? Ramban Nachmanides says it means someone who can organize things, a great organizer. And that's what we need. We need leadership and organization. And crush shame and call out the name. What is this whole book about?
names.
Names. It's all about names. So the two major themes of an Ish Chayil and Eshet Chayil meeting each other and name perpetuation, it's all there in this little poem. And they continue with their big blessing. And your house should be like the house of Peretz, who was born to Tamar, to Judah. Another intertextual passage. Another passage you can't avoid thinking about when you read this book. Where else in Tanakh did a woman seduce a man to marry her because he needed to marry her? And
Judah and Tamar.
Judah and Tamar, and because certain people had died and we needed to reestablish their names, Judah and Tamar. So they compare,
The older brother, yeah, the two older brothers.
right? From the seeds that come from this girl. So how is she like Tamar? She's a seducer. How is Boaz like Judah?
Shows
He-
respect.
Had to be I don't want to say coerced, but he had to be kind of prodded.
I think a lot of perhaps Judah changed. He was the one that said, sell Joseph. And 2 decades later, he says, wait a minute, we can't sell our brother Benjamin. He's growing. And so is Boaz. He was weak, now he's getting strong.
I like
Growth.
that. I like that. Yeah, rather than saying is Boaz good, is Boaz bad, I think our studies this year have brought us to a new conclusion, which Dr. Levy brought out very well. Boaz starts out weak, but he's developing his Oz. He develops his strength, and the strength eventually comes out. Naomi knew that he had that in him. She was the one who really likes him. We don't know if how much Ruth likes. Ruth finds him a good catch, but it's really Naomi who's kind of taken with him. But in any event, some suggested last week, we mentioned there's maybe some flirtation that Naomi imagines with Boaz. But in any event, how is he like Judah? Judah and Elimelech have actually been compared, because both Judah and Elimelech did something wrong and they left their people. After Judah sold Joseph, he went away. And then he came back. So Elimelech also may have left really Israel and Judaism, but he came back.
His wife came back.
Wait a second. Boaz. All right, moving along. Vayikach Boaz at Ruth, Vatilo Lisha. So Boaz took Ruth. It's a biblical expression, taking meaning as a wife. And Vayavo Elah, he came to her. That is an expression related to Levirate marriage. It is a part of the idea of Levirate marriage is to come unto the woman and give her a child. God gave her conception. This is not a common expression. God gave her conception. To which the Midrash jumps in and says, Rabbi Shimon, son of Lachish, famous rabbi from Israel, said, there was no womb for her. The Holy One, blessed be, he carved her a womb.
What?
From where do we know that it was not a given that this woman would have children? Tell me how we know that.
Why not?
Tell me.
She was married before and she didn't have children.
How many years was she married?
10?
10?
Correct.
Yeah.
The rabbis actually have a concept that if you're married for 10 years, it's time to call it quits. If you 10 years, no children, it's grounds for divorce. Again, some people choose not to divorce, but it's grounds for divorce.
Isn't that a theme of our matriarchs? Childlessness.
Right. So here's another, and yet notice the whole story. Presumes that she's going to get remarried and she's going to have children. The whole story from the beginning, right? She says, "Girls, go home. You'll get married. You'll have children." What do you mean? They never had children, right? Unless here's an interesting theory. Unless
the boys couldn't have kids.
Or
it was never consummated?
They were what?
Or God
It was never consummated?
Well, something like that. What do we know about these boys' ancestor known as Er and Onan?
Oh,
right? So without spelling it, right? If you know what onanism is, we don't have to spell it out any further. But it's a possibility that these Machlon and Kilian are the bad guys. There's a suggestion there are no bad guys in this book. Maybe they are the bad guys, and that's why God sort of killed them, not because they came with their father and left Israel and abandoned the Jews and went to the enemy, not because they married Moabites, because they had committed an onanism of sorts. They didn't want to have any children, and everybody knew that as soon as they get away from these creeps, they would have children. But the other idea is that it wasn't a given that they would have children. It was weird that they thought they moved to a new country, all of a sudden she's gonna have children, and God gave her pregnancy. He gave her conception, which is a strange expression. It's not Hebrew. It's not. You can give her a child. You don't give someone conception. A woman can conceive. A tahar. It's a verb. It's not a noun. Hey, Rayon. I don't think it appears elsewhere in Tanakh. And she gave birth to a child.
Conceive is a verb transitive.
Yes.
But there's a spiritual side. There's a spiritual side to everything.
Yes.
When the hand of God is involved, the human soul doesn't always see it. I mean, there was a reason why she conceived, is because there was a divine intent for her to conceive.
But notice this is different.
We sometimes get lost in the weeds, in that we look at the history and we look at the story and we all leave God out of the picture. God's a very important element in the picture always. when anything divine happens, there's a God's presence. And maybe this is teaching us to look beyond what there's just you can't see the forest for the trees. You got to look at what God's hand was trying to do. He was trying to create a future for the Jewish people. He was trying to create unity. He was hoping a leader would step forward to give us that. We still haven't got it, but we're trying to get to that point. I always see the spiritual side to everything, unfortunately. And I'm a student of history, which is most probably a bad thing to do. But
on the other hand, if you look at it like that, then the whole thing is beshared.
Well, that's the point that I'm trying to get at.
Yes.
And this is a divine interest in improving the status of the Jewish people. We've always got to try to see from the stories where the future lies. What is the destiny that the Jewish people have? That's enough. I'm sorry, I've said enough.
You sound like an Orthodox.
So I just want to point out what's so interesting about what Malcolm was saying. The following. Yes, we already showed on numerous occasions, not numerous, but enough times that it's pretty prominent. It's a major motif in this book that there's God's hand. Why did Elimelech die? Why did his children die? Probably it was some kind of divine punishment for whatever. Then
why did Elimelech leave?
It was a famine, right? God makes the famines too, right? Then, after all, there are famines that we don't blame Abraham necessarily. Some people do, some people don't. Right. Then we saw that she just happened to go. It's almost the book is sort of laughing at the way people talk. The book says, and she chanced upon the field of Boaz. Then she comes home and she says, oh, I was at Boaz's field today. And she says, Boaz? Oh, Boaz. And she starts her eyes start flittering and she's like, oh, Boaz, Boaz, you went to Boaz.
But Ruth didn't go hang out with the boys. That was really, really, really something.
Right. That's
really,
also something.
She has high morals.
Right. But then the Ploni Almoni just happens to pass by. And so until now, we've had the hand of God in a subtle way. As a matter of fact, Naomi claimed that God has afflicted her, that everything's bitter. That and many people want to suggest, and Yael Ziegler, that Naomi is the Jewish people. One second. Naomi is the Jewish people. And the Jewish people are saying, everything's terrible. This is horrible. We came to Israel. We're not even sovereign in our land. We forget that in the period of Judges, the Jews did not have a state of Israel they had today. They were slaves. So things are miserable. And Naomi says, on behalf of the Jewish people, this is terrible. God is afflicting us. God is killing us. And the books until now, says, well, just happened to go to this field. And that fellow just happened to go by. And he happened to not want to marry her. And then the Torah, the book, in its deafness, then pulls away the curtain and says God gave her conception. You see the difference? Until now, God was there. You're right, Malcolm, but he was hidden. And we had to look for him. And now it sort of pulls the curtain out and says, he's one of the characters in this book too. Don't forget about him, right? So I think
the women are blessing Hashem. If you look at the women are blessing Hashem. The women sit and blessed Hashem.
Right. Well, right. Well, I don't trust everybody. Don't forget, Boaz started out very pious, but he wasn't doing anything. Right. He was always the second we meet him, he's greeting people in the name of God, and he didn't say Hashem. Right. He's using the real name.
Right.
But he wasn't doing anything. He wasn't. His cousin came to town. He didn't do anything. So he was a little bit lax. But so I'm a little suspicious of words, but yes, the whole town are getting into this God stuff and giving blessings. Let's continue. Now, let us continue. So yeah, I think one of you mentioned, I think Joe, that yes, she's one of the matriarchs who doesn't have children and suddenly does have children.
Right.
V'torena Shimon Nami, Baruch Hashem. Again, the women say Baruch Hashem, Shelo Ishbit Lach Goel Hayom. That God didn't stop from giving you a Goel, a redeemer, not the other guy. Let his name be called out in Israel, because Boaz's name will be called out. So, more blessings, right? And why is it more surprising now? Because she's not Jewish. What else is they getting at? Why is it more surprising now? Anyway, what is the theme again? The name, Shemo. Shemo. Whose redeemer is it? Again, the double entendre. He didn't prevent you having a Goel. Again, to Malcolm's point, throughout the book, the Goel is also God, the redeemer. But then the question is, why are they talking to Naomi and say, you're blessed. Don't feel bad. You're blessed. God gave you. So does she need comforting? Does she feel bad about the marriage? What's going on? So as someone who's been studying PTSD recently, listen to the Tzror Hamor, this Spanish commentator 500 years ago. He says she had PTSD. All right, he didn't use the word PTSD, but he was saying that when this marriage is going on, she actually is crying.
Yeah.
Naomi is having a hard time.
Naomi.
Because all this good stuff brings up
Memories.
All the bad
memories, the death, the children, the widowhood. I mean, she suffered 3 losses in her life, 3 significant losses. So
this book is 3. You have 3 widows in this book.
Yes.
Naomi, Ruth, they're all widows.
Yes. And that's what Malcolm brought out another week, and we're about to bring out in a moment. The first part of the book couldn't have been more tragic. It's like, I always hear the wind blowing. There's these 3 women who have no source of support, who could be easily raped, pillaged, and killed, who are walking, from one country to another, and they have nothing, and everything is lost. And the national state isn't any better.
You're hungry.
If the one commandment is be good to the widow, the orphan, the stranger, that's Ruth.
Yes. So in many ways, it's if you read in Emor the story of Shavuos, it's all about it's a time of reaping, reap for the poor, and that's what this book is all about. But we'll have to that's our question for today. What is the purpose of the book? We'll get to in 1 minute. All right. So let's finish up so we can get to that question. And he should be a renewing of your life. One of the speakers I heard recently about this topic, she said, I think it was my Machtenister, Mrs. Rosenzweig, she said, look at what kindness can do. It brings people back to life. Naomi was half dead. She was half suicidal. And through the kindness that was done by Boaz, by Ruth, it literally brought people back to life. And more broadly speaking, it brought the Jewish people back to life.
Right.
All we needed was some kindness, some interaction between people, and we got a nation again. And your daughter-in-law who loves you, and here we have the true love story. The book of Ruth, ironically, is not a love story of Ruth and Boaz. It's a love story of Naomi and Ruth. And it says it right here. Your daughter-in-law who loves you gave birth to him, and she's better to you than 7 children. Who suffered a lot in Tanakh and was given 7 children in the end?
Yes, Job.
Correct. Excellent. 2 points.
I need to read
2 points for Charlie. Correct. You can't. My teacher of Meidan at Kush says you can't avoid another biblical parallel. Looking at this book, Malcolm, you started to notice that this is a book about tragedy, and the first chapter, it's saying what happens when someone loses everything and has no idea what's happening, and somehow then is able to find God's hand, and then and actually come out of it and bring redemption as well. So
you don't want me to bring up the Holocaust, do you?
Well, I mean, many people had the same experience. They lost everything, and then they had the proverbial 7 children. Here, it's not real 7 children. It's someone better than 7 children. Who else said, I am better to you than 7 children? Hannah's husband. Hannah's husband says, I'm better than 7 children. But he wasn't.
yeah.
A husband is not a replacement for 7 children. But a daughter-in-law can be a replacement for 7 children. Right? Some people have daughters-in-law. One daughter-in-law can bring you more meals than 7 children. Okay. Next.
If you look at this, the whole book of Bereshit, it's losing and gaining. Everybody loses and then they gain. Adam and Eve, Noah, Abraham.
Yes.
It's loss and gain, loss and gain. It's the same.
Someone said it starts right at the beginning. The death of Hevel, Adam's son, is the beginning of this question of what in the world's going on here. Hevel was the good guy.
Yeah.
What happened? So, yes, that question is immediately there. So moving along, at the end of the book of Job, he has 7 sons and 3 daughters. And there's a rabbi in the Talmud who said that the book of Job took place in the period of the judges. And the suggestion is that it says that because there's a lot of parallel between Job and this book. Naomi takes the child, and she held her in her bosom, and she became the adoptive mother, almost like
I don't understand
Moses'
that.
mother.
I don't quite understand that. Is it like she was so close to the child that she loved him so much that she
Yes. But it's also because this book is about Naomi's problem.
Yes.
It's the book of Naomi, like Joe says. It's the book of Naomi's problem. She lost her family. Now she got her family.
Okay, so it was Ruth's child. I misunderstood when I read this.
In some ways, it doesn't solve Ruth's problem because Ruth doesn't even hold the child. She has nothing to do with the child.
That I don't get.
No, it's right. So the neighbors said, again, the whole community is getting involved. Yulad ben Lenami, it's like a child was born to Naomi, and the women called him Oved. So I saw in this Spanish rabbi, he said, maybe they were arguing what the name of the baby should be. Should it be Machlon, which is a terrible name, but it's the name of the deceased husband? Should it be Salmon, Boaz's father? So the women decided, let him be Oved. And he was the father of Yishai. Someone pointed out genealogies in Genesis denote the end of an era and the sifting of characters, right? What's happening here? We're saying all these people are not significant. Let's skip to David. 10 generations, just like between Adam and Noah and Abraham, 10 generations. Good. And again, they called his name. It's a book of names. It's a book of people who lost their name. It's about reestablishing the name. And therefore it ends on a bunch of names. This is a poem. These are the children of Peretz. Peretz gave birth to Chetron. Chetron gave birth to Ram. Ram gave birth to Aminadav. Aminadav gave birth to Nachshon. Nachshon gave birth to Sama. Salmon, they changed his name from Salman to Salmon. Salmon gave birth to Boaz. Boaz gave birth to Oved. Oved gave birth to Yishai. And Yishai gave birth to David. So it's nice to end with the names because the whole book is about names. There's suspense there, right? Because we don't know that at the end it's going to say, this crazy cockamamie story, it all ends with David. This woman from the enemy, it ends with David. Surprise. And who was left out? Who was left out? I forgot. And who is the son? Whose son is Oved? Let's see. Is Boaz. So Elimelech. Elimelech is not in this story. In other words, those people were establishing their names, but in the end, it's Boaz gets the name. He did the hard work. He gets the credit. Why is Levirate marriage so important? One might argue, if this is a book about some form of Levirate marriage by cousins instead of by brothers, one might argue, I have a video about this, Levirate marriage is the most important central law in the Torah. It means that a person can make up for another person. A person can restore life. A person can take someone like Naomi and give her back her life. It's a very powerful idea. And it was important in that era because everything was lost and life could be restored. And one might argue that all these births are miracles. Uriel Simon wanted to argue, and I'm sure you might appreciate that, Malcolm, that these births are not like It's not like, and you know, blah, blah, blah. This one begat that one, begot that one. It's more like, and Salmon, he gave birth to Boaz. And Boaz, it's each one is a miracle unto itself. I know that's what Uriel Simon is a great scholar. He thinks it's true. I'll take that. Notice in Deuteronomy, the Levirate marriage, it says his name should not be wiped out from Israel. That's what this book is all about. And now we get to our final question. Give me 5 more minutes, even though we're a little over time here. What's the purpose of this book? So there's a cute expression in the Midrash. This book doesn't have any laws of purity and impurity, forbidden, permitted. It doesn't teach me any laws. You know why it's written? To teach me the great reward for those who are kind, those who do acts of kindness.
Yeah,
So that's
this
one
is a book.
Love, like the hippies.
That's one theory.
And
However,
show it.
This is a book of chesed.
Yes.
So you want to say that it's an ethical book. Rabbi Ed Shalom says, Rabbi Ed Shalom was here a few years ago. The prophets, when you read the prophets, you won't get that many laws from the prophets. So this book might be an exception. But you know what you get? The essence of Judaism.
Yes.
So this book is about the essence of Judaism. The Rambam says, if you're not kind, you're not Jewish.
That's right.
Oh,
That's
so
right.
even if you go to shul and wear tefillin and read and learn, and you're not nice.
I'll tell you,
When Moab became mean and they didn't give us food, they're not Jewish. When Lote gave the angels food, he was saved. When the daughters wanted to save the world, they became the mothers of Ruth. When Ruth did kindness, she is Jewish. So it's all about kindness.
Love, kindness.
And somehow there's a relationship here of human action and redemption, kindness and redemption. So Joe wanted to say it's an ethical book. However, we should point out how many legal questions are resolved by this book. The status of Moab. Some scholars think that this book was written in the period of Ezra. Again, I don't agree, but they think it was written in a late period when there was a lot of intermarriage. And the question was, could you marry a Moabite? And the answer was only married by women, not men. And this book addresses that question. Charlie, I think we'll just mute you for a second. You want to comment? There's a sound coming from you. Okay. Is it legal questions that are solved through this book, like the status of Moab, status of David? Is David Jewish? Right? The Zohar Chadash says that. The laws of mercy. It's very law and mercy. We mentioned that one of the great scholars, Jonathan Grossman at Kush, he said that there's law and mercy. The law is you can't marry a Moabite. With mercy, you can marry the Moabite woman. Is it really levirate marriage? According to the law, it's not really levirate marriage. But with a little mercy, you can do levirate marriage for your cousin. Is it really gleanings? No, with a little mercy, she got much more than gleanings. He gave her like a whole stack of wheat. Is it really is this really the law of a Moabite? Can you really marry a Moabite? Well, not really, but we're going to do it anyway because there's some love on top of the law. And conversion is also, the laws of conversion are derived from this book as well. Philosophical questions. Malcolm's been very focused on the philosophical question throughout our 4 weeks. The ways of providence. That's what Malcolm was talking about before. This is a book of providence, divine providence. It's not unveiled till the last chapter, but it's there the whole way through. The problem of evil. This book is as much a book of Job as the book of Job.
Right.
And the question is, what's going on? And sure enough, you know what's going on? The Mashiach is being born. And you say, what? I thought it was death and destruction. No, the Mashiach is being born. It's strange, right? Some people see the Holocaust that way. It's maybe oversimplification, but it's possible that in the ashes of Auschwitz, Mashiach is being born. It's a Jewish way of looking at things. The problem of evil. From good things come good. In other words, people do good things, and it brings good things. The redemption of the nation. The ethical we mentioned, kindness, continuity, responsibility. Very important theme here. It's the Rivka story of David. In other words, the Jews were chosen because there was a Rivka and she was really kind. And David was chosen because there was a Ruth and she was really kind. Rivka is to the Jews what Ruth is to David. because there's a special covenant with God and the Jews and God and David. But how does David get the covenant? Because he's got a mother like Rivka. They both were kind and chosen for that reason. The role of chesed in Judaism cannot be underscored, cannot be underestimated. The responsibility of the wealthy. It's an interesting side theme of ethics. Responsibility of the wealthy people that they need to take action, and it may even involve, getting their fingernails dirty with some of the poor people like Ruth. Notice he could have said, "You're like Ruth said to him, I'm just a pauper. You're a wealthy man. You're my master." And she said, "No, there's no class thing here. You're a nice person. We're getting married." Eschatological. There's an eschatological point of this book. How do you bring redemption? A simple act of kindness.
Absolutely.
Let people say hello to each other in the street. That's how do you repair society, right? Let people say hello. What if people in America actually, metaphorically could bless each other in the name of God, right? So it's, it doesn't believe in these grand sort of theme. It's saying very basic stuff like being good to the poor and to an old lady and to, right? These things can change the whole world. And then I noticed something else. Some of the rabbis in Israel wanted to say that, we read it this time of year because Shavuos is an Israel holiday and the book of Ruth is an Israel holiday. So I talked to my Chutin, Rabbi Rosenzweig, and he said, well, yes, but let's remember, the Ruth comes to Israel not only as a national homeland, but as a symbol of her acceptance of Judaism. So Shavuos is a national holiday where we are focused on Israel, not as like some like go Israel, yay Zionism. But we're focused on Israel in as much as it represents the Abrahamic experience of leaving where you are and going to a new place to accept God, which is what Ruth did. So it's about Israel, but not Israel as a national homeland, but Israel as our spiritual homeland and destiny.
It's sort of a version from a family to a people.
Right. In fact, it's almost like the conversion of the Jewish people to Judaism.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. What do you mean? What do you mean at Sinai or with Ruth?
It's like Sinai. It's suddenly we've arrived at the point where God wants us to be, where we are beholden to the laws to understand how we're supposed to behave as Jewish people, the kinds of kindnesses we should show each other. Because kindnesses brings about unity. And we're missing that in America at the moment, unfortunately. And there's not enough kindness going around. If everybody would be kind to everybody else, we wouldn't have a problem. But, Ruth's conversion is a great symbol for the conversion of the Jewish people, where they went from not doing things the right way to hopefully start moving towards that, towards wanting a temple, to have a place where the Mashiach could finally come. I mean, my grandmother always used to say that when 1948, that Israel, she said, it's Mashiach's Zeiten. She used to compare the fire and flame, the burning of the ashes of the Holocaust, arose the flame of Israel of freedom. It's a beautiful view of the world. It's taking a negative and creating a positive. I mean, Israel would never have happened if it out of anything other than the Holocaust. I mean, sorry, forgive me, I tend to get a little back to the
and notice how all the good things that come out of even a crisis like the one we're in right now, like Blum was saying, like there's so much learning going on, right now, probably more than ever, because everyone's stuck in their homes and we have the Zoom and, so it's amazing how, beautiful things can come out of tragedies. Dr. Levy?
Yeah, I wonder if you could compare the moment we will do and we will hear to your people are my people.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Right. But I think what I was learning from Rabbi Rosenzweig is that we tend to look at sort of the Zionist way. It's a book about agriculture and Israel and choosing Israel. And then we have another way, the spiritual way. You say it's about choosing God and it's really all together, that Israel is part of going to Israel for her was a spiritual journey. It was accepting the role, the nation that's who's there for the purpose of being kind. What's the purpose of Israel? To be a nation where when there are old people, poor people in the field, they get what they need. And it took this strange woman from this inhospitable country, but who had ancestors who remembered Abraham. They lived in Abraham's house, Lote. And it took her to remind everybody, this is how you do kindness. I did it to my mother-in-law. They did it to her. And what goes around comes around. And before you know it, you had a cycle of kindness going on. And it changed the whole nation. So it's sort of like Moses. She's sort of like Moses in that she comes from outside and helps them be true to themselves. But she's not completely from the outside because she comes from a Lot who knew how to be hospitable a little bit, right? So it's all fascinating. Finally, which of those meanings that we mentioned connect to Shavuos? Well, really all of them. It's a conversion time. It's the harvest time. And when you have harvest, you have to be kind and you have to give the gleanings. You get the Torah like Ruth got the Torah. And the Yalkut Shimoni says, you know what Ruth has to do with Shavuos? If you want to get the Torah, you have to have suffering. The rabbis say you can't acquire the Torah unless you work hard at it. You have to suffer through it. All good things, the land of Israel, Torah, and something else of the world to come, all come through suffering. And it's, we thought we discovered that theme in this book, that it's a book of Job, and the Midrash said it already. The reason we read it on Shavuos is because you want to get the Torah, you gotta stay up all night and learn it. And the Torah is all about chesed. As they say, on 1 foot, Torah. If you had to put the Torah on 1 foot, obviously it would be about chesed. And David is born on this very day. That's a rabbinic tradition. He was born then. So that works also. It also shows the oral tradition. We're celebrating receiving the 10 Commandments, but of course, as Jews, we believe in an oral tradition. And this book, as what was his name, Jim Kugel, he came here and he said the Bible as it was. You can see from the Bible how Jews read the Bible. They didn't read that verse, a Moabite shall not come in their nation. They must have read the verse like the rabbis do. Because if they didn't, well, what's this book talking about? So you can see the oral tradition in this book. It's the most oral tradition book in the whole book. It speaks of the ability of elder to see things differently. My teacher recently said a radical thing. He says, until this point, if you would have asked Joshua, can you marry a Moabite? He would say under no circumstances, and he would be correct. And if you did, we could get you for it. But then when they changed their mind and they reread it like this, since this is the official elder interpretation, the elders, Boaz and friends said it's okay, then guess what? From now on, when you marry a Moabite woman, it's fine. It's interesting. It's a radical idea. The rabbi who said that is an extremely conservative person. He said, but the radical idea that the laws actually change. I don't know. The laws were reinterpreted. A new interpretation came up. But Rabbi Lichtenstein used to talk about Torah's Chesed. There's the Torah, which is strict, and there's the Torah's Chesed. There's like the kind. So it's almost like the very interpretation that this kind woman could be part of the Jews. That itself is kindness. It's a softer way of reading something. You read it with a kind eye. It's a Torah's Chesed, a Torah of kindness, where even the verse that says you cannot marry a Moabite, it says right there. And with kindness, you can somehow read her into this story. Now, you and I can't do that. We can't, you cannot murder. Well, but sometimes you can't. We can't. You and I can't change the rules of that. But occasionally in history, the Jewish tradition can look at a verse and say, we're not reading that way anymore. We have midrashic tools, and from now on, we don't read it that way. We read it different. It's a fascinating and radical kind of an idea. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I know it's really late, so we have to stop here. Of course, it's a tradition on Shavuos. We have to stay up late. But I appreciate everyone's comments. Each one of you contributed to our discussion, and I very much appreciate it. And I'm sorry there are only 4 chapters, otherwise we keep going next week. But it's
Can I add
if you missed any,
can I add a
yeah, I just want yeah, 1 second. If you missed any, we do have them on online, and I hope you'll check them out because we had a good time. Yes, Shira.
If you're, bored or you're up late or whatever, if you go on YouTube and put in the story of Ruth, there was a very nice 1960 movie. It's 2 hours and 11 minutes long on the story of Ruth. So,
Okay, but your job is to come back and critique the movie based on everything we've learned. That's your job.
well, and several times I wanted to say, but in the movie it said, no. But anyway, there's something fun for you to do if you got time, which we do.
Thank you very much.
Can what you said refer to in Devarim, but this is not in heaven, it's not across the sea, it's in your mouth, in your heart. Is that what we're getting at?
Yes, when the rabbi said that the Torah is not in the heavens, they're saying that the rabbis have authority to sort of play with the Torah. God gave it to us to play with. We can't take that too far. I mean, you can't just rewrite the Torah. But there have been, but what the rabbis did with the Torah in the Talmud is a radical thing. They reinterpreted thousands of verses that you say, but it says this. No, it means something else. And they have the authority to do it. They have midrashic tools. They had rules. They have different things.
That's how we're different from other people that use the Bible.
They interpret
and read it literally.
Right.
I mean, it's in a nutshell.
But you should always read it with kindness. If somehow the way you're reading it leads you to like be mean-spirited, so you have to say, well, maybe I'm reading it wrong. Because the book is telling us you got to figure out where the Torah's chesed is. Rabbi Lichtenstein tried to give this huge lecture, like in front of thousands of, like 1,000 people, about the Torah of kindness. Half of us didn't understand what he was saying, but it was something to the effect that that sometimes when the Talmud reinterprets things, they're using a Torah not of truth but of kindness. It's a fascinating idea. It's a radical idea. Again, taking to its extreme, I don't accept it in an extreme form. I don't think that I, Joel Finkelstein, have a right to take any verse in the Torah and reread it because I feel like it or I think it's not kind or something like that. But I think as a community we can say, well, if this verse or this approach is leading us to be mean or something, then we have to think, that can't be. We believe the Torah is kindness, so that can't be the story. But as the exact law, that we have to turn to the great sages and see what they say. But
the difference between taking it literally and taking it seriously.
Right, literally and seriously are two different things.
Right,
as this Jonathan Grossman said, it's a book of law and mercy. This book of Ruth. I mean, it's a book of law. There's so many different laws in the Torah that are touched on by this book. In the prophets, you won't find that many laws. If you read the whole Isaiah, if you find a couple of things about Shabbos, you're happy, right? Idolatry. But it's not a lot of. This book has tremendous dependence on, Deuteronomic law, all kinds of different laws, Leviticus, all kinds of laws. And yet it's all about abrogation of law. I mean, none of the laws actually line up with what's going on in the book. So it's just so fascinating. So anyway,
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. And have a great Chag, a great Yontif. And I was suggesting people could, if you want to go back and look at it again, there are 4 meals on Shavuos. You can eat 4 meals, 4 chapters.
Cool.
Wonderful.
I'm exhausted. I loved every minute of it, but I'm exhausted.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good
Thank
night.
you very much.
Good night.
everyone.
Take
Thank
care,
you, Rabbi.
everybody. Stay well.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Take care.
Be well.
Thank you so much.
You're
Really
welcome.
enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
All right. Have a good evening. Thank you.